and then choosing this program. I had some notion that I wanted an emphasis on professionalization and service, which Mario spoke to earlier, and that really has been my experience here, not only in teaching at CUNY and participating in the ESA, but also in the social environment that we have in the program, which is really what I didn't realize I should have been looking for when I was looking at programs. And one of the great strengths of our program as well is the kind of warm and competitive in the sense that everybody's doing amazing work, but not competitive in the sense that anybody is trying to one-up anybody else environment. Everybody, particularly in area groups, the Romanticism area group was really important for me in that it created this kind of smaller community within the program where I had peers in all years of the program encouraging me to do things like go to conferences when I felt like, well, what do I have to contribute in a conversation at a professional conference? They said, well, you really do have something, and so you should go do that. And then after encouraging me to do things like that, helping me to do them by workshopping abstracts, sharing teaching materials, sharing writing, things like that. And so that's been one of the most important things about the program for me, is the kind of very real support that you get not only from faculty, but also your fellow students, and that's something that I'm not convinced you get in many other programs.
Yeah, I did this last year, so I can understand how stressful this is. Very, very temporally close to me. And one of the things is that I applied to graduate school almost by mistake. I decided in October that I was applying by December. And then, as you said, I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was an economics student. And then I was like, no, figured it out. Then I got admitted and I came here. And it was at this event, and then I came and met Carrie, and then I met people, and what they stressed to me actually was the public nature of this institution. And as Siraj mentioned already, I think that is what helped me make my decision. I needed to get out of Sarah Lawrence after 4 years, and I was like, I cannot go into another space like that. I need to go to a space that understands the things I study, just the institution and the space itself as a place where people actually care about things. And another thing I think Esther brought up.
Sorry, Sarah Lawrence.
I mean, I love it and all, but no one cares. It's not cool enough. And the other thing that Esther brought up with the PSC thingy that we did with the ESA, that's another thing as well. There's an active movement to redefine, to re-understand what a public education is as well happening here right now. And I'm a first year. I haven't been here for long to tell you, oh, this place is great, everything's wonderful. I've been here for, 8 months? But in those 8 months, the conversations around me have been really inspiring and, have made me think about what is an education. And that, I think, is an important thing if let's assume, at least 80% of us want to be educators.
So I think I do think that one of the important points that you bring out is that for me, what was one of the most important decisions I had to make was what were the people going to be like that I was going to spend the next 4 to 7 years of my life with. And that's especially difficult, I think, coming out of the process of writing an application in which you spend a lot of time just talking about yourself and talking about the projects you want to do and the things you hope to do, sort of irrespective of anybody else. But the reality is that when you enter a program, you will almost never be doing work just on your own. In the classroom, you'll be talking out your ideas, you'll be hearing feedback, you'll be sharing with your professors, with your other colleagues, at the bar or in this lounge. And I think that the types of discussions that help spark your ideas are, the attitude that people have will change the types of conversations that can be had in that space. And if you're somebody who likes a smaller group that talks about, you know, very similar things and can perhaps get more in depth about certain topics, like if you go to a department that does a lot of Derridian things and you want to talk about Derrida all the time, which is fine, you're going to have different conversations that you have at a large program in which people are so sort of diverse, and you're going to make different types of connections. And I'll say that those are the types of connections that I found most rewarding in my work. I mean, now I'm saying most of the time I call myself a 19th century Americanist. I came in as a post-colonialist, and now I just listed myself as doing transatlantic narratives. I think that that type of, the way I'm just constructing my ideas wouldn't happen at another type of institution. And for me, that's what was most rewarding. And so I think that that's something to think about. Look at the people in this room. Are these people that when you talk to them, like, you could continue talking to them for this long? And if you can't, don't try. Like, that'll be hard for all of us. It'll be the worst party game ever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm going to pull up my own panel for a second, but I'm a composition and rhetoric person, and in a lot of places that's its own PhD, but I specifically chose to get involved in this department and participate in the kind of crosstalk that results in. And for me, it's been extremely helpful, and there's a lot of bridges that we, that compositionists create with literature scholars and cultural studies and these kinds of things that we do very strongly at this program, build those bridges. And we start to share a lot of ideas. We start to take each other's classes, and I would not have had any of that if I had gone straight for a PhD in Comp Rhet.
So first I would just like to say how much I'm enjoying the conversation of hearing from my fellow students, you know, what their experience has been. So it's hard to even to appreciate that enough. I feel lucky that you all were accepted so that I could listen to my colleagues. So and you know, and also yeah, I hope that you will join us, because this, I would agree that this is a very special program. I came here really with a desire to professionalize. There were a few professors here whose books I had read, and I admired their approach to the fields that I was interested in. And I had spent 5 years after my undergraduate studies living in Germany and working in a few different career fields while still exploring my the interests that I'm focused on today. And you know, so I had really reached the point where I thought that I wanted to give an academic career a try, that this is what would be fulfilling for me, and you know, a way that I could, you know, help do something that might be fulfilling for other people as well. And I've found since being here that not only was it the right decision to get to know these professors better, who have, you know, been very open with me and have supported me at different points that, you know, whenever I inquire about what my options are or seeking guidance. I've gotten advice from so many professors in my field, professors not in my field, from professors who are on the executive, who are executive officers, who are not necessarily in an, you know, in a counseling position. That's not, you know, one of the requirements of taking on extra administrative duties, but have certainly, you know, lent their insight as well into, you know, my navigation of getting a PhD in English. And so I would say that what I found in it, you know, at that point of coming here wanting to professionalize, not only did I find that, you know, that was possible for my goals of later on seeking a career, but as well that the professional experience starts now, and that it's a huge pleasure to be able to organize events and to learn from the members of your cohort, in addition to from professors. And as you hone your interests, as I've honed my interests, I've, you know, been able to discover professors whose work I, you know, did not pay attention to when I first applied, that I really wanted to, in addition, work with them. And just to reiterate this point about going to a public university, I think that it would have been fine if I didn't, but I'm really grateful for the perspective I have on New York City and on the kind of, you know, the stakes of questions about, you know, representation and the intellectual life and narrative, that I feel that my way of approaching these issues is, you know, has a good shot at becoming increasingly mature because of where I am.
So I have a kind of similar trajectory to yours, in that I got my bachelor's from Hunter, and I wasn't planning to go to grad school at all. I was actually planning to go into nursing school, and got to the end of getting my bachelor's in English and realized, wow, I really can't imagine not continuing to do this kind of work, right? But the other thing is that I'd also been a political activist and organizer for like 10 years, and I couldn't allow myself to go into academia unless I was going to be able to like put those two together, you know. And it was really great to find a space where some of that's, you know, happening here. You know, right now we have this big struggle going on, you know, around our contract that's happening. And I say this with a fair amount of embarrassment, because I also, little did I know that I would also find myself, you know, it's hard to juggle doing activist work and doing the academic work as well, right? And so, but I knew that I had to find a space where that was at least happening for me to be able to, you know, to survive, and also just a place where I felt like, you know, because I was coming in as an older student and as someone who's had a lot of experiences outside of academia, I wanted to ensure that those experiences would be seen as also, you know, academic in some way, as also incorporated as in the ways that I think through, you know, my ideas and things. And I've definitely found that here. It's been really great. You know, it's funny that I feel like, you know, now we see so much of these kind of campus-based struggles happening all across the country, right? Particularly around like Black Lives Matter and things like that. And that's really great. But I also, so I'm happy that it's happening everywhere. But when I decided to come here 2 years ago, you know, I was really excited that some of that stuff was already kind of happening here, where there was some kind of sense that there was movement going on this campus, you know, connected to the broader CUNY public system. So yeah, and it also, of course, ties into like the lack of like competition that we talked about. You know, like I also needed to be in a space that felt like it was, you know, really doing, you know, us, you know, for me, being an academic means, you know, trying to do work that is meaningful to the outside world, right? And not just competition to like get a job and do, although let's face it, I want a job too, you know. but it's important to me that is in my view and in the view of you know, a lot of the people that I see here at the school. So.
Thank you. I just want to ask, can you hear Leilani in the back?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The microphone is being a little shoddy, and you can't tell if you're like, okay. So we already got into the next question I was going to ask pretty heavily, but I kind of want to keep prodding you in that direction. If you want to talk about the experience that you've had at the GC in terms of like, and specifically in terms of your route after you got here, your academic route, the kind of courses that you've taken, how where your mind is in terms of your academic trajectory, and any kind of resources in or outside the GC that you've tapped into to help kind of work your way through that trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other big strengths of a big program like this is that we have faculty doing such diverse things in their own research and teaching so many different kinds of courses. And the department really encourages students to look beyond their own areas, which I think is really, really important. So I've taken all kinds of courses here in my area, but also, you know, so far outside of it. And the really productive thing has been thinking about how really work that on the surface looks radically different from my own has a lot to do with it, in fact. And so kind of harkening back to the conversation about the conversations that happen here, that's been really, really important as well.
Yeah, no, I'd say the same thing because I also come in as an English student who read Dickens for the first time last semester. So I had like a lot to do. Like I had a lot of work to do to like be in some of the discussions here because let's be honest, literature is still an extremely wide department. When you're talking about the text, at least it is. And I haven't read a lot of that. So I had a lot of work to do. And this isn't work which the department is forcing me to do. This is work which I, taking some classes in areas outside my field, understood was something which was making me think in interesting new ways, which was like messing up everything I was already doing, right? And I think that that's what I've enjoyed the most. Like, we still have to write the comprehensive exams, so it's, for us it's a little different. I still also do need it for the exam, but it's also just like really like made me think about things interestingly and changed the text I feel comfortable looking at. Because earlier, if you put Dickens in front of me, I'd just be like, oh my god, that's so big, I could never read it and make sense of it. But, like, you know, now I'm just like, okay, I'll read the book and I'll, like, try. And I'll probably not make sense the way, like, people in 1950 made sense of it, but I'll do something. Like, and it's fun, and it's really great. And, like, one thing I'd say is my professors let me do crazy things, and it's really nice.
I think sort of piggybacking off that, I mean, I was about to say recently, but I did it a year ago, so I can't quite claim that. I went through the process of putting together my orals lists. And one of the great things I think about all of the different steps here, other than the comprehensive exams, which are changing, is that they're pretty wide open in terms of what you can do, unlike, again, some departments. Like in some departments, if you do postcolonial literature or something, like there is essentially a preset list that you get to read. And there is benefits to that. Everyone, you know, talks about the same works and things. But putting together my lists, I was able to, at first it was maddening because I looked at every preset list that was available on every website from every other university just so I could get an idea of like what sorts of books I wanted on my lists. But then you start going like, I don't want to talk about that book, and I don't want to talk about that book because of this, or I do want to add this book instead, and sort of going through that process of having to create a narrative for yourself that I think is one of the things that, again, being able to read broadly and have access to diverse faculty, but also being able to really sort of work towards diverse goals by having essentially undirected, well, not undirected because you have advisors, but not having restrictions to the types of literature or texts or you know, visuals or images or anything that can be on those orals lists, and so that they can be maddening sometimes when you just want something to tell you how to write it. But it can also be, ultimately, once you're through it, just incredibly useful to start defining how, in fact, you are different than these other sort of narratives of what a postcolonial list looks like, or what a 19th century American list looks like. Your changes become the kind of beginning of what is where you're going to stake your claim. And I think that having the space to be able to do that within this kind of no rules, very few rules program, you know, there's only one required course. There's, you know, we've had presentations here about alternative types of dissertations. Like, we're always looking to, you can produce the same old stuff, and that is good and it is useful, but if you are having problems fitting into that mold, we're interested and encouraging for you to explore those spaces. And I think that that's been one of the really helpful things for me.
I would second the point about finding your own path here, that it's a very that you can do it, that it's a great thing to actually to be able to do here, that there are people who will talk to you about what courses you want to take, and by being here you become oriented. Do I care more about the theoretical approach? Now that I see the period that I'm really focusing on in my period, does it, you know, would it be extra interesting when broadening my scope to take that particular course in another period as opposed to a different one. So coming in, it's very I was overwhelmed in thinking, how am I going to chart my course? But in fact, I'm glad I've had this opportunity, and I think that when I was at an event like this last year,